David never thought living with an alien would be simple, but he also never thought it would be this strange. The human exchange program had placed him in a small two-room unit on the space station Vayora hub. Rent was expensive, food was limited, and jobs were hard to find. Sharing a room with a stranger, an alien stranger, was his only option. Her name was Lyra. She was from a species called the Ileri, known for their glowing eyes and quiet nature. Her skin was pale silver, her hair soft and dark, and she had a way of moving that looked like floating. David always kept his distance, polite but cautious. They said Ileri had strange traditions. Some humans even whispered they could see into your thoughts if they stared long enough. For 2 months, nothing unusual happened. Lyra cooked her food that smelled like metal and flowers. David cooked his noodles. They rarely talked except for greetings. It was awkward but manageable, until one night. The station had frequent power cuts, but usually only for a minute. That evening, when David stepped into the small shower stall, the lights flickered and then went out completely. The sound of machinery shut down, leaving only silence and the drip of water. He sighed. Not again. He finished quickly, stepped out of the water and reached for a towel. But in the dark, his hand hit empty space. The towel rack had slipped, fallen to the floor. He bent down to find it, but the door swished open. A faint blue glow spilled into the room. It was Lyra. Her eyes were glowing, brighter than usual, lighting the darkness. David froze. He was completely naked. The towel was still on the floor. Lyra's gaze locked on him. But instead of embarrassment, her face showed something else. Her breath caught, and she whispered something in her own language, a sound like a song and a hiss. David snatched the towel and wrapped it around himself. Hey, don't you knock? Lyra didn't answer. She kept staring, her glowing eyes wider than he had ever seen. Look, it was an accident, David said, forcing a laugh. I didn't mean... She cut him off with a sharp shake of her head. Not accident. Her voice was low, trembling. This is Gilman. David frowned. What are you talking about? Lyra stepped closer, her bare feet silent on the floor. The blue light from her eyes flickered, almost pulsing. David felt his skin prickle. It was as if the air itself had grown heavier. You should not have been seen, she whispered. Now the bond! She stopped, clutching her hands together tightly. The bond, David repeated. His towel slipped slightly, and he quickly held it tighter. Listen, whatever this is, I think we can just forget it happened. But Lyra didn't look like she could forget. She was trembling, her silver skin almost shimmering. Among my people, she said slowly. To see one unclothed, it awakens something. A mark between us, a connection. David's mouth went dry. You're saying, you and me are what? Married now? Her eyes flashed. Not married, bound, fates linked, until it ends. The words sent a chill down his spine. He wanted to laugh it off, call it superstition, but the way her glowing eyes locked on him made his chest tighten. I didn't ask for this, David muttered. Nor did I, Lyra said sharply. Her voice trembled with both anger and fear. But it is done. And others will know. Others? He asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she turned away, pulling the door shut behind her. The room went dark again, leaving only the faint dripping of water and David's pounding heart. He sat down on the shower bench, towel clutched tightly. He didn't believe in alien omens. He didn't believe in magic bonds. But Lyra's face, her fear looked real, and something else was bothering him. When her eyes glowed, he felt a strange warmth in his chest. Not attraction, not embarrassment. Something deeper, like a wire, had been plugged into him. He shook his head. No, just my imagination. But when he stepped into the common room later, Lyra was sitting stiffly on the couch, her back straight, hands folded. She looked at him once, then looked away quickly. Silence stretched between them. David tried to eat noodles. The taste was flat. He glanced at her again, but she didn't move, didn't speak. Finally, she said, almost too quiet to hear, They will come for you. David's chopsticks froze halfway to his mouth. Who? Lyra didn't answer. The lights flickered, the power fully returned, and the room filled with buzzing sound again. But David couldn't shake the feeling that the real darkness had only just begun. David barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Lyra's glowing gaze and heard her trembling voice. They will come for you. He told himself it was nonsense. Just alien superstition. He was human. and humans didn't play by alien rules. But his heart didn't believe his head. Something felt wrong, like a countdown had begun, and he didn't know what was ticking. The next morning, the space station buzzed as usual. Vendors shouted about cheap spice packs. Engineers argued over parts. The smell of hot oil and strange alien fruits filled the halls. It was noisy, normal. Yet David felt like everyone was watching him. Lyra walked beside him in silence. Usually she drifted like she was part of the background, unnoticed. Today eyes followed her, or maybe they followed them. David leaned closer. Okay, you're going to explain this now. Last night, what did you mean they will come for me? Lyra didn't look at him. Ilari elders will know. They will sense the bond. When one of us is marked, the signal spreads. David frowned. A signal like psychic Wi-Fi? Her lips pressed tight. It is not joke. They will call it destiny, and destiny cannot be undone. Great, David muttered. So I'm... what, doomed? She finally met his eyes. Not doomed, chosen, but chosen ones often do not live long. His stomach sank. By midday, rumors swirled. 2 alien traders whispered when David passed. A group of human workers nudged each other, smirking, but with unease in their eyes. Lyra walked stiffly, her chin high, but her glowing eyes darted nervously at every corner. When they reached the food court, a tall Ilari male blocked their path. His silver skin gleamed like polished metal, and his robes shimmered with thread that looked like starlight. His eyes locked on Lyra first, then on David. It is true, the man said in a deep, rolling voice. The omen has been seen. A human and an Ilari, bonded. David's throat went dry. Listen, I don't know what you've heard, but nothing happened. The alien's lips curled in something between a smile and a sneer. Nothing. To be seen unclothed is everything. Now your lives are woven. Woven? David asked. Lyra gripped his arm tightly. Don't answer him. Her voice was sharp, desperate. The man tilted his head. You should be honored, human. Few of your kind survive such a bond. If the elders find you worthy, they may bless you. If not, he let the words hang. Then he walked away, robes trailing like shadows. David stared at Lyra. What did he mean? If not? She didn't reply. Her grip only tightened. That night, their apartment felt smaller than ever. David paced the floor while Lyra sat stiff on the couch. You have to tell me everything, David said finally. No more half answers. Lyra's glowing eyes dimmed as if she were exhausted. Among my people, the unclothed form is sacred. To see it is to see the truth of life. If one sees another by accident, it creates a binding energy. That bond means we are linked, our thoughts, our fates. It is not something we choose, it simply is. David swallowed hard. So, you're saying you and I are connected? Like forever? Lyra nodded slowly. Until death. The words hit him like a punch. He ran a hand through his hair. Okay, fine. Let's say I believe this. What happens next? Why are people acting like I've signed my death certificate? Lyra's voice dropped. Because such bonds are forbidden. Humans and Ilari are not meant to be joined. Elders will not allow it. They will test you, push you. If you fail, they will end it. And by end, I mean, yeah, I get it, David said quickly. His stomach churned. Silence filled the room. He sat down heavily across from her. And you? What happens to you? Her silver shoulders stiffened. If you die, I suffer the same. Our link drags me with you. That is the curse. David stared at her in shock. So either way, we're both screwed. Lyra finally looked at him. For the first time, her eyes softened. Not just glowing light, but something human-like, almost sad. Yes. Later, as David tried to sleep, he tossed and turned. Every time he closed his eyes, he felt something strange, like another presence in his head. Images flickered behind his eyelids. A silver forest, glowing rivers, strange stars he had never seen. He sat up, heart racing. Those weren't his dreams. They were Lyra's. He turned and saw her sleeping on the couch, her body curled, face calm. Her glowing eyes were closed, but a faint shimmer lingered. David whispered to himself, "We're really connected." Then her voice spoke, not out loud, but inside his mind. "Do not be afraid," he jumped. "What the hell?" Lyra stirred, half awake, and whispered, "The bond grows stronger. Soon distance will not matter. What I feel, you will feel. What I see, you will see." David stared at her, his chest tight. This wasn't just superstition anymore. Sight was real, and deep inside he knew Someone somewhere already knew about their bond. And they were coming. David woke up to the sound of metal pounding on the door. It was not the gentle knock of a neighbor. It was heavy, sharp like a hammer, the kind of knock that carried authority. Lyra was already awake. She stood in the middle of the room, silver skin glowing faintly in the dim light. Her eyes flickered like burning lamps. "They are here," she whispered. David's chest tightened. "Who's they?" Before she could answer, the door hissed open. 3 figures entered. Ilari guards in dark armor, tall and broad, carrying staffs that glowed with crackling blue energy. The one in front, with a scar running across his jaw, spoke in a low voice. "Human Lyra, you will come with us." David stood frozen. Lyra didn't move either, but her body tensed like a coiled spring. "Come where?" David asked carefully. The scarred guard sneered. "Before the elders. The bond must be judged." They didn't wait for permission. 2 guards grabbed David by the arms. The crackling staffs were close enough that his skin tingled. "Hey, easy," David shouted, but they pushed him forward. Lyra walked silently beside them, her face pale, her steps steady but heavy. They marched through the long, spiraling halls of Vayora Hub, past market stalls and maintenance tunnels. Everyone turned to look. Whispers followed them like shadows. "That's him. The human with the bond. He won't last the night." David's heart raced. He wanted to yell back, to tell them it was all a mistake, but the words stuck in his throat. Finally, they entered a chamber so large it made David's neck ache to look up. At the far end sat a half-circle of Ilari elders, their robes flowing, their glowing eyes burning like moons. The guards shoved David and Lyra to the center. An elder with hair white as frost leaned forward. "The bond is real, we feel it." "Human, speak your name." David swallowed hard. "David Rains." The elder's gaze cut through him like ice. "You stand in violation of sacred law. An Ilari and a human bound by accident, it cannot be. Bonds shape destiny, and this destiny smells of disaster." David's fists clenched. "Look, I didn't choose this!" "It just happened." "It's not my fault," the elder's lips curled. "And yet, fault or not, the bond is made. We will test you. If you prove unworthy, both you and Lyra will be erased. If you prove worthy, perhaps the bond will be allowed to remain." David felt the blood drain from his face. "Erased?" Lyra finally spoke, her voice strong. "Elders, it was my mistake. Do not punish him." The elder raised a hand. "Silence, Lyra. The bond ties your fates. You will share his trial." The floor beneath them rumbled. The chamber shifted, opening into a wide circular pit. The guards pushed David and Lyra forward until they stood inside. The elder's voice echoed. "Trial 1. The Shadow Maze. Survive until the light returns." The floor closed above them, sealing them in darkness. David's breathing came fast. Great, a maze. In the dark. And I can't even see 2 feet ahead. Lyra's eyes glowed faint blue, faintly lighting the stone walls. "Stay close to me." They moved slowly through twisting corridors. The air was cold and smelled of damp stone. Every sound echoed, their footsteps, their breathing. Then came another sound, a hiss, low, drawn out like steam escaping. David froze. What was that? Lyra's eyes narrowed. "The maze has guardians, shadows that hunt the weak." David's heart hammered. "Of course it does." A shape moved in the darkness, a long, twisted figure crawling on all fours. Its body was black smoke, its eyes 2 burning coals. It lunged. David stumbled back, but Lyra raised her hand. A burst of light flared from her eyes, striking the shadow. It screeched, dissolving into mist. David's jaw dropped. "You could do that this whole time?" Lyra's breathing was heavy. "The bond strengthens me, but it also drains me. I cannot do it often." David nodded quickly. "Okay, then we need to move." As they ran deeper, the maze grew colder. David's lungs burned, his legs shook. But then something strange happened. When he stumbled, Lyra gasped, like she felt his pain. When she slowed, David's chest tightened, forcing him to push forward. Finally, they reached a narrow bridge across a pit of darkness. The shadows hissed below, dozens of glowing eyes. Halfway across, the bridge cracked. David slipped, grabbing the edge. "David!" Lyra cried, kneeling, grabbing his arm. Their eyes locked. For a heartbeat, he felt her strength flood into him. His body no longer heavy, his grip stronger. He pulled himself up. They collapsed together on the bridge, gasping. The glow of Lyra's eyes dimmed. This is the bond. We share breath, pain, strength. We rise or fall together. David stared at her, sweat dripping. Then I guess we'd better rise. After what felt like hours, they reached the heart of the maze. A great crystal pulsed with white light, scattering the shadows. The chamber floor above opened again. The elders' voices thundered. The first trial is survived. The bond is real, stronger than expected. David and Lyra stood side by side, their bodies shaking but still standing. The elders' eyes burned brighter. But strength can be a danger. Next we will see if your will breaks. David swallowed hard. He didn't know what trial 2 would be, but he knew one thing. He was no longer alone, and that was the scariest and most powerful part of all. The chamber walls rumbled as the floor sealed shut above them again. The shadows of the maze faded away, leaving only silence and the faint glow of Lyra's eyes. David leaned against the cold stone, chest heaving. That was insane. Lyra's voice was low but steady. The first trial is always the body. The second is worse, David frowned. Worse? What could be worse than smoke monsters trying to eat us alive? She turned her glowing gaze toward him. The second trial tests the mind. Few survive. Before he could answer, the walls around them shifted. The floor dissolved into shimmering light, and suddenly they were standing in a vast, endless plain. The sky above was not the station ceiling, but an open horizon of swirling stars. David blinked. Okay, this is new. A deep voice echoed all around. It was the elders. Trial 2, the truth within. Face what you fear most. If you run, you fail. If you deny, you perish. Only truth will keep the bond alive. David's mouth went dry. Face what I fear most. Great, just great. The stars shifted. A figure stepped out of the void. David's heart froze. It was his father. Not as he remembered him, kind and tired, with grease-stained hands from years of work. Though this version's eyes were cold, his mouth twisted in disgust. You always were a disappointment, the image said. You ran from responsibility. How you hide among aliens because you can't make it among your own. David staggered back. That's not true. I didn't run. The figure cut him off. You've always been weak. Always a burden. Do you think this bond makes you strong? It makes you pathetic. She will suffer because of you. David clenched his fists. The words stabbed deeper than the shadow claws had. Because part of him believed them. Lyra's hand touched his arm. Her eyes glowed softly. Do not listen. It is not truth. It is your fear speaking. David shook his head. But what if it is true? What if I drag you down? What if I fail again? Lyra's voice was calm but fierce. The bond does not lie. In the maze you pulled yourself up, and me with you. That is not weakness. That is strength. Her words cut through the haze. David took a deep breath. He faced the figure. You're not my father. You're my doubt. And I'm done letting you control me. The figure dissolved into mist scattering across the starry plain. But the trial was not over. Lyra stiffened, her glowing eyes wide. David turned and saw her fear take form. A tall Ilari woman in golden robes stepped forward, eyes blazing like suns. Lyra gasped. Mother. The vision's voice rang like a blade. Lyra, you shame our blood. To bond with a human? To taint our line? You are no daughter of mine, Lyra trembled. I didn't choose this, the figure sneered. Excuses. Always excuses. You were weak as a child, and now you are weaker still. Because of you, our house will fall. David stepped forward. Hey, leave her alone. But Lyra raised a hand. No, David, this is my trial. Tears glimmered in her glowing eyes. All my life I wanted to prove I was enough, that I could stand among my people. And now even in my heart she calls me worthless. David's chest ached. He moved closer, speaking softly. You're not worthless. You saved me back there. You gave me strength when I had none. Whatever she says, it's a lie. And I see the truth. Lyra's lips trembled. She looked at him, really looked. And for the first time since they met, her fear cracked. She faced the vision. I am not worthless. I am Lyra of the Ilari. I chose to live. I chose to fight. And if that means standing with a human, then so be it. The figure snarled and shattered into starlight. The plane shook. The stars blazed brighter. A wave of warmth surged through David's chest, and Lyra gasped at the same time. The elder's voice thundered again. You have faced the truth. You did not run. You did not deny. The bond grows stronger. David felt it too, like a cord of fire between them, pulsing with shared strength. He could feel her heartbeat steady and strong inside his own chest. Lyra whispered, "The bond deepens. We are closer now. More than I thought possible." David's pulse raced. "Yeah, I noticed." But before they could catch their breath, the voice continued, "The final trial will decide all. If you endure, you live. If you falter, the bond will break. And so will you." The starry plain collapsed around them, and once again they stood in the dark chamber. David's hands trembled. He had faced his worst fear and Lyra hers, and they had survived. But the way the elder's eyes burned down on them made one thing clear. The hardest test was still waiting. The chamber pulsed with silence after the illusions vanished. David could still feel his heart racing, and every breath came heavy. Lyra stood tall beside him, her glowing eyes softer now, but behind them he saw a flicker of fear. The eldest of the council leaned forward, robes rippling like silver flames. His voice rolled across the hall. "You have survived the maze. You have faced your truth. But one test remains, the trial of fire. Through fire, all bonds are either purified or destroyed," David muttered under his breath. "Why is it always fire?" Lyra's fingers brushed his hand, steadying him. "Because fire reveals what cannot be hidden," she whispered. The floor beneath them split open. From below rose a platform, and on it blazed a ring of molten energy, like a circle of living fire swirling with white-hot flames. The heat licked at David's skin, and sweat instantly rolled down his face. The elder's voice thundered. "Step into the circle. Only there will the bond be judged." David swallowed hard. "And if we don't?" The scarred guard who had dragged them earlier sneered. "Then you die here without honor." David glanced at Lyra. She nodded once. Together they stepped inside. The moment their feet touched the fiery ring, a wall of flame roared up, cutting them off from the outside. The heat was unbearable, searing their skin. David gasped, "We're going to burn alive." Lyra's voice trembled, but she gripped his wrist. "No, the bond will protect us if it is strong enough." The flames surged higher, forming shapes. At first they were faceless, but soon they took form. Creatures of fire, towering with molten claws and blazing eyes. They circled, hissing, waiting. David raised his fists even though he had no weapon. "Of course. Fire monsters. Because why not?" One lunged, claws slashing. David ducked instinctively, but Lyra stepped forward, her eyes glowing brighter than he'd ever seen. A wave of blue light burst from her, colliding with the flames. The creature howled and fell apart into sparks, but the effort left Lyra staggering. David caught her. "Hey, don't burn yourself out!" She leaned against him, voice faint. "It takes from me. But with you, maybe—" David frowned. "With me?" She pressed her forehead to his. Instantly, David felt it, the surge of energy rushing between them, their bond burning like a living thread. His skin tingled, his breath deepened, and strength filled his limbs. The next creature attacked. This time, David met it head-on. His fist swung, and to his shock, his human hand struck with force like steel. The fiery body shattered on impact. He stared at his own hand. "What the hell?" Lyra's voice was a whisper in his mind. "It is the bond. We are one now. My strength is yours. Yours is mine." More creatures rose, 5, then 10 surrounding them. Each strike pushed David and Lyra to their limits, their bond flickering with every exchange of blows. At one point, a fiery claw slashed across David's arm. He cried out in pain, only to see Lyra gasp, clutching her own arm in the exact same spot, blood trickling down her silver skin. David's eyes widened. "Wait, you're hurt because I'm hurt?" She nodded weakly. "And I am hurt when you are. That is the bond's cost." The realization hit him like a hammer. Every mistake he made would wound her. Every injury she suffered he would feel. But strangely, it also gave him fury. He couldn't let her suffer because of him. He wouldn't. With renewed rage, David fought harder, dodging strikes, channeling every ounce of borrowed strength into counterblows. Lyra stood with him, their movements in perfect rhythm, like a single heartbeat driving two bodies. One by one, the creatures fell, until the fire around them dimmed. The circle began to collapse, the flames shrinking to a single burning figure in the center. Unlike the others, this one did not hiss or screech. It simply stood tall, its body made of pure white fire, its eyes cold as stars. The elder's voice echoed. The bond faces its final flame. Conquer it, or perish. The figure raised a sword of fire and charged. David barely blocked the swing with his forearm, heat searing his skin. Lyra screamed, feeling the burn ripple through her own flesh. "David," she cried, "we must strike together." He gritted his teeth, locking eyes with her. "Then let's do it." They clasped hands, and the bond blazed between them like a second sun. Power surged through their bodies, stronger than ever before. Together they lunged forward. Lyra's glowing light flared blue. David's strength pulsed red hot, and their combined force smashed into the fiery figure. With a deafening roar, the final flame exploded, scattering into 1,000 sparks that rained down harmlessly. The circle's fire died. The chamber returned to silence. David collapsed to his knees, panting, his arm still smoking from the burn. Lyra knelt beside him, her silver skin scorched but her eyes steady. The elders' voices rang out above them. "The trial of fire is complete. The bond has endured all tests, stronger than we have ever seen." Some of the council murmured in unease. Others nodded in awe, but the eldest elder's eyes narrowed. "And yet strength can bring danger. This bond may shape more than your fates. It may shape the future of two species." David looked up, sweat dripping, chest heaving. "So what now? Do we get to live, or are you still deciding?" The elder's lips curved into something that was not quite a smile. "You will live, for now, but the bond will bring trials beyond this hall. Already enemies gather who will see it broken." David glanced at Lyra, their hands still linked. For the first time, he didn't just feel fear. He felt resolve. Whatever was coming, they would face it together. When the trials ended, David thought the worst was over. He was wrong. The elders released them from the chamber, but their words still rang in his mind. "The bond will shape more than your fates." For 3 days, whispers followed them everywhere. Markets fell silent when David walked by. Ilari traders turned their glowing eyes away. Even humans gave him sidelong looks, some filled with pity, others with envy or fear. Lyra spoke little. She moved with calm grace, but David could feel it through the bond, her tension, her unease. Every step was careful, every glance sharp. "They're watching us," she whispered one evening as they returned to their small apartment. "Not just the council, others, those who want the bond ended." David frowned. "Ended? As in cut?" Lyra's eyes dimmed. "As in killed." The attack came sooner than he expected. That night, while David tried to cook the only meal he could manage, instant noodles, the door exploded inward. Smoke filled the room, and 3 masked figures rushed inside, weapons glinting in the faint light. David stumbled back, coughing. "What the hell?" One attacker swung a blade at him. Instinctively, David raised his arm. The blade cut deep across his skin, yet in the same instant Lyra cried out, clutching her own arm as blood shimmered on her silver flesh. The bond. Every strike on him struck her, too. Rage flared in David's chest. He couldn't let her suffer for him. Not again. Grabbing the nearest pan from the stove, he swung with all his strength. The attacker's mask cracked, and the figure fell with a grunt. Lyra's eyes blazed. She raised her hands, and a pulse of blue light burst outward. Throwing the other 2 back against the wall, they scrambled to their feet, retreating into the smoke. One hissed, "This bond will bring war. Better you both die now than later." Then they vanished into the shadows. David stood panting, pan still in hand, blood dripping down his arm. Lyra leaned against the wall, her wound glowing faintly where the blade had cut. He dropped the pan and rushed to her. "Are you okay?" She nodded weakly. "The wound is shallow, but this is only the beginning." The next day, David and Lyra met with one of the few humans on the station he trusted, Captain Jorin, a former soldier who ran a small repair shop. Jorin shook his head as he wrapped David's arm. "You've stepped into something bigger than you know. There are factions here, human and Ilari both, who don't want peace, and you 2 bonded across species. You're a symbol they don't want." David winced. "A symbol? I didn't sign up for that." Jorin's eyes hardened. "Doesn't matter. You are one. The bond scares them. And scared people kill." Lyra's voice was steady, though David could feel her fear underneath. "What do you suggest, Captain?" Jorin sighed. "You need allies, both of you, because enemies are already gathering." That night, David sat on the edge of his bunk, staring at his bandaged arm. Lyra sat across from him, silent, her glowing eyes fixed on him. Finally, she spoke. "You should leave. The bond ties us, yes, but you could still run. Hide among your people. They would not find you easily." David barked a humorless laugh. "And what? Leave you here to deal with assassins and angry elders?" "Not a chance." Lyra tilted her head. "Why?" "You owe me nothing." David looked at her, really looked. He thought of the trials, of how her strength had flowed into him, how her fear had become his. He thought of how she had bled when he was cut. "I owe you everything," he said quietly. "If I run, I drag you down with me. If I stay, maybe we stand a chance. But either way, we're in this together." Through the bond, he felt her breath catch, her heartbeat stumble. For a moment, her glowing eyes softened. Then she whispered, "Together, then." The following day, Joran sent word. "Meet me at Docking Bay 9. I've arranged passage off the station. It's the only way." David and Lyra moved quickly, keeping to shadows. But unease churned in his gut. Every glance felt like eyes on their backs. When they reached the bay, it was too quiet. Too empty, David tensed. "This feels wrong." Lyra's hand brushed his. "It is wrong. They are here." Figures stepped from the shadows, half a dozen humans and Ilari armed, waiting. At their center stood the scarred guard from the trials, his eyes burning with hate. "The council may have spared you," he said coldly, "but we will not. The bond must be broken tonight." Weapons rose. David clenched his fists, heart racing, the bond surging between him and Lyra. He looked at her, and she nodded once. They would not run. They would fight. Docking Bay 9 burned with silence. The scarred guard stood at the center, his glowing staff crackling with blue energy. Around him, 6 armed figures waited, their weapons ready. Their eyes filled with cold intent, David's heartbeat thundered in his ears. He glanced at Lyra. Her glowing eyes met his, steady, fierce. Through the bond, he felt her resolve wrap around his own fear, turning it into something sharper. The scarred guard raised his weapon. "The council may hesitate, but we do not. Your bond is poison. It will be cut here." David forced a smirk, though sweat trickled down his back. Funny thing about poison, it spreads. And then the attack began. Blades of energy sliced through the air. David ducked, pulling Lyra with him as sparks showered across the deck. He swung a metal pipe he had grabbed from the floor, striking one attacker across the chest. The man staggered back, but David felt the jolt of impact in his own ribs. Lyra had been hit at the same time. Pain and strength pulsed through them together. The bond blazing hotter. Lyra raised her hands, blue light surging from her palms. The wave of energy blasted 2 enemies off their feet. But the effort made her stagger. David caught her, growling. "Stay with me," she whispered back through the bond. "Always." From the shadows, another figure stepped forward. David's stomach dropped. It was Joran. The captain's face was grim, eyes cold. "I told you the bond makes you a target. You didn't listen. Now I have no choice." David's chest tightened. "You set us up?" Joran's voice cracked, but his weapon stayed steady. "This isn't about you, David. This is about keeping peace. If humans in Ilari believe bonds like yours are possible, they'll turn on each other." "I'm stopping a war before it starts." Rage flared through David's chest. "By killing us?" "Better 2 die than thousands," Joran said. Lyra's eyes burned. "You are wrong. It is not the bond that brings war, it is fear. And you are feeding it." The attackers closed in, forming a ring. Weapons glowed. The scarred guard sneered. "End it now." David tightened his grip on Lyra's hand. "Then we end it together." The bond flared. He felt her heartbeat inside his chest, her breath in his lungs. They moved as one. David swung his pipe, shattering a blade. Lyra followed with a blast of light, striking another enemy down. Each hit drained them both, but each victory filled them with burning resolve. Still more enemies pressed in. David's muscles screamed, his body trembling. Lyra's glow flickered, her strength fading, and then the scarred guard stepped forward, staff raised high. "This ends now!" The staff struck, lightning flashing across the floor. David pushed Lyra aside, taking the full force of the blast. His body convulsed, agony ripping through him. Lyra screamed, clutching her chest as the pain seared through her too. David collapsed to his knees, smoke rising from his skin. The guard raised his weapon again for the final blow, but Lyra staggered to his side, wrapping her arms around him. Her voice shook, but her eyes blazed. If he falls, I fall. That is the bond. Her glow surged brighter than ever, flooding the chamber with blinding blue light. The scarred guard hesitated, shielding his face. David gasped, finding strength through her. Their bond flared like a star, pain, strength, fear, and love tangled into one unstoppable force. Together, they rose. David grabbed the staff as it swung down, his human hand burning against the crackling energy. Lyra's power flowed into him, and with a roar he snapped the weapon in two. The guard's eyes widened. Impossible! David slammed his fist into the guard's chest, sending him sprawling. Lyra followed, a wave of light blasting the others back. Joren stumbled, his weapon slipping from his hand. He stared at them, stunned. No, it can't be. David's voice was raw, trembling with fury. The bond isn't poison. It's proof. Proof we're stronger together. Lyra stood beside him, silver skin glowing in the aftershock. And that is what you fear most. The attackers scrambled to retreat, dragging the unconscious guard with them. The bay doors slammed shut, leaving only silence and the stench of burned metal. David collapsed, breath ragged. Lyra knelt beside him, placing her hand on his chest. Through the bond, he felt her strength knitting his pain, soothing the fire in his veins. You saved me, he whispered. Her eyes softened. No, we saved each other. Footsteps echoed in the distance. Civilians, station guards, witnesses. Whispers spread quickly. They had seen the battle, seen the impossible. For the first time, David realized the truth. Their bond wasn't just about them anymore. It was about everyone. A symbol of unity or of war. Lyra looked at him, her voice low. The trials are over, but the real test begins now. David met her gaze, their bond steady and unbroken. Then let's face it, together. As the whispers spread and eyes turned toward them, David and Lyra stood side by side in the ruined docking bay. Broken weapons lay around them, smoke rising in the air, not as enemies, not as strangers, but as something new, something stronger than fear. A human and an alien bound not by accident anymore, but by choice.